Hello and welcome to today's show. I want to ask a question today. Do you know that a UC Berkeley study concluded that emotional intelligence is 400 times more powerful than IQ? I want to talk today about some really interesting topics, and it's going to help you to understand a lot of things, including the concept that money. I know you're watching this show because money is of interest to you, and your relationship with money may or may not be so great, and you're trying to work on that, or you're trying to work on your career or your business. But what if I told you money has no value? I'm going to bring on today's guest, and we're going to have this discussion, so stay tuned.
Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today.
Hello, and welcome to today's show. We have a terrific guest on our show today, and his name is Phil Johnson. He's joining us here from Canada, and I am going to introduce him. He is an emotional intelligence expert and a executive leadership coach, and we are super lucky to have Phil here. I'm going to let him tell you a little more about what he does, but first, I want to start with something that Phil mentioned to me, which was that money has no value. And I think you'll find his stories and insights and wisdom so interesting. So, Phil, welcome.
Thanks, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. We had quite the conversation the other day, and it was really eye-opening. I couldn't stop thinking about it and talking about it. And I did not fully read your bio, so I'm going to give you a chance to talk about yourself. But can we get to this idea that money has no value? And you mentioned that to me, and I really want you to explain that to our listeners.
Absolutely. Imagine that you and I are neighbors, and we live in the country, and you grow potatoes. You're a farmer, and you grow potatoes. And I live across the road, and I make pianos. Before the advent of money or shiny beads, and if you didn't want one of my pianos, it was going to be really hard on me. So society came up with this intermediary step called money as a way of moving wealth around. So maybe you didn't want one of my pianos, but Susie down the road did, and she gave me some shiny beads, and I came back and gave the shiny beads to you, and voila, an economy is born. So really, money has no value. It's paper, rocks, it's digital, but it's really intended as a way of moving wealth around. And your greatest wealth is your emotional intelligence.
Mm. Yeah, I really want to dig into this because, we hear this term a lot, but I realized after talking to you how much I didn't know, actually. It's a term you sort of make assumptions about what it means, and you, I don't know, you don't dig in deep enough. And when you and I talked, I realized I was so inspired to read more and learn more. And I know you work with many executive leaders around this. Because I didn't read a full bio, can you just tell us a little about the work that you do real quick?
Sure. For the last 21 years, I've been working with executives and organizations around the world to help them achieve career, corporate, and personal growth by developing their emotional intelligence. And I've created a program. I'm 68, and I've been on this path actually for the last 54 years. And I created a program called the Master of Business Leadership. It works like hell, but it's also harder than hell. Emotional intelligence, very simply, is the ability to feel the fear and anxiety that change and innovation always creates in us and move through it towards the vision of our desired results, as opposed to allowing that anxiety to keep us stuck in our comfort zone. And I call that work emotional labor. And Berkeley did a study, a 40-year PhD study, a bunch of PhDs actually, on looking to compare intellectual intelligence with emotional intelligence. And they concluded that emotional intelligence was roughly 400% more valuable than intellectual intelligence in achieving success. And quite frankly, I think that number is very low. I think it's actually much higher than that. Our ability to do intellectual labor or our intellectual intelligence is largely genetic. If you have a high IQ, your parents had a high IQ, their parents had a high IQ. So not everybody can have 160 IQ, but anybody can develop their emotional intelligence. The development of emotional intelligence isn't an experiential process. It's not an intellectual process. It's an experiential process, meaning you can't develop it by reading a book or having a conversation or watching a video. Here's a comparison of the relative ROIs of IQ versus EQ. Think of intellectual intelligence as somebody giving you $10,000 a day for 31 days. So at the end of 31 days, you've got $310,000. Now think of emotional intelligence as a penny that doubles in value every day for 31 days. So day one, you've got a penny. Day two, you've got 2 pennies. Day 31, you've got $10.7 million. And if you continue that on, day 40, you've got over 5 billion. Day 50, you've got over 5 trillion. The point is, it doesn't take any more effort to go from day 30 to day 31 than it did to go from day 1 to day 2. But it's a journey. It's a building. It's an awareness building process. And there are significant both biological and sociological resistance we have to change. See, we don't know what we don't know. And our educational system has failed us, and our employment system has failed to prepare us for the tsunami of change we're facing. Some scientists estimate that in this century, we could experience the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change. So change is increasing at an exponential rate. And we've got a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. So our resistance, both biological and sociological resistance we have to change, is going to create increasing levels of drama, chaos, and conflict. And that's going to force us to develop our emotional intelligence in order to change our trajectory. Does any of that make sense?
Yes, and we had a fascinating conversation about this, and I've really thought about this since that whole idea of the chaos and stress that we all feel from this rate of change that's happening, and energetically we feel it, even if intellectually we aren't sure. And I think that's really a lot of what everybody's talking about right now with burnout and all the topics that are coming up constantly. It's why people are turning off the news. That's why people are doing all the things to try to, push back some of the negative input, I think. And yeah, I'm fascinated by this. And when we talked, I found myself getting a little discouraged, like, okay, what do you do about that? I mean, it sounded a bit like sort of a doom and gloom story, but you brought up that with emotional intelligence, if we can all, or at least a good chunk of us up that game, we can maybe manage this in a more optimistic way.
We need challenges that force us out of our comfort zone in order for change to occur. Without challenges, we wouldn't have the motivation to leave our comfort zone and move through the anxiety that creates in us. So we're at a tipping point where we're being forced to change, and we don't like it. Let me explain. Well, so I'll explain the barriers we have to change, the three main barriers we have to change, but I'll also explain the benefits of developing our emotional intelligence. So we have two primary biological sources of resistance to change. First one is our amygdala. We've got a part of our old lizard brain. We have two little amygdalas in our right and left hemispheres that whenever it sees us taking an action that causes us to leave our comfort zone, it doesn't want us to do that. It's trying to protect us. It doesn't want us to ever leave the safety of our cave. So it secretes a hormone into our bloodstream called cortisol, and that causes the executive center of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, to shut off, and we go into what psychologists refer to as an amygdala hijack. We go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Some people lash out, some people run away, some people freeze like a deer in the headlights. And when that happens in conflict situations, sometimes people die. And when it happens in business or personal situations, relationships die. We burn trust. So as an analogy, if you think of your amygdala as a very frightened 4-year-old child, the development of our emotional intelligence acts like a big brother or a big sister to quiet the amygdala response down and better enable us to feel the fear and anxiety that change and innovation always creates in us and move through it towards the vision of our desired results, as opposed to allowing that anxiety to keep us trapped in our comfort zone. The second biological source of resistance we have to change is our existing habits. Once we develop a habit, it's there forever. It's a neural network pathway in our brain that we develop through our actions. And we can develop new habits at any age. It's called brain plasticity or neurogenesis. But even though we can develop new habits that are better than our old habits, the new habits are always going to be weaker because there's an insulation layer around the neural network pathway that's called myelin that's thicker when we're younger than when we're older. So there's going to be an ongoing battle between the old habits and the new habits internally to us. Our old habits aren't going to want to go quietly into the night. So the third source of resistance is sociological, meaning that people around us don't want us to change. Because if we change and start to get better results, maybe they're going to have to change, and that scares the hell out of them. So the best way to ensure that they don't have to change is to make sure we fail. So they can say, look, I told you, now shut up, keep your head down, and get back into the herd with the rest of us. So I will tell you unequivocally that the development of emotional intelligence will guarantee career, personal, and corporate success, because there's an underlying energy physics to all of this that guarantees it. But it's harder than hell to do because of what I just said. See, there's only two sources of motivation that will cause us to leave our comfort zone and move through the anxiety that change creates in us. And it's pain or passion. And hardly anybody's connected with their passion. So for the most part, the individuals that are motivated to do the emotional labor of leaving their comfort zone in pursuit of better results are usually motivated by pain. They're usually motivated by an urgent desire for better results than they're currently getting.
Yeah, this is fascinating, and I love studying, the brain, and I've been reading some fascinating things about how we can calm the brain down in a way that doesn't help us. I mean, even negative thought patterns can be calming. They can give you some stress relief, and yet in the big scheme of things, that's not helping us in any way, except in that moment, I guess, when you are getting a little cortisol blast or something. So,
well, we do a lot of things to try and get out of our thinking mind. Actually, every mammal has a built-in desire to be in the present moment and to stop thinking.
Mhm.
It's actually, we spend over $4 trillion a year trying to get into a state of flow where we're no longer thinking.
Mm.
Some of those methods are healthy, some of them are not.
Mhm.
Football players bang their helmets against each other to try and get out of a conscious state. For instance, Michael Jordan, when he was playing basketball, I can guarantee you that if you asked him what he was thinking when he was playing, he would say nothing
Yeah.
because he was completely connected to the present moment, and he couldn't tell you when he was going to dribble, shoot, or pass.
Mhm.
And that's what people call being in a state of flow. So we have this thinking mind that never stops thinking, but it's not who we are. It's kind of like a ticker tape running in the background.
Yeah. So part of emotional intelligence then is being able to be in the present moment, I'm
The
gathering.
present, the present moment is all that exists. The present moment is all that will ever exist. There's 86,400 present moments in every day because that's how many seconds there are in a day. And our ego-based fear doesn't want us to be in the present moment. It wants us to feel less than or greater than, but never equal to others. Um, so we're usually thinking about some type of better future moment that we're trying to get through the present moment to get to this better moment. So that robs us of the opportunity to be more fully present in the moment. There will never be a future moment. When that moment arrives, it'll simply be the present moment.
Yeah.
And we share the present moment, this moment, with everybody on the planet. This is the only time, this moment, that we can make a decision and take an action to generate a result. We can't do that in the future. We can't do that in the past. So by focusing more, by learning to lower our walls and be more in the present moment, we become more inspirational leaders, able to create better results.
Yeah, I want to get to an example of how emotional intelligence, has been shown to provide these kind of exceptional results. I want to ask you first, though, while it sounds understandable and wise, when everybody is thinking, especially leaders, actually, I mean, everybody really, but leaders are thinking about how are we going to reach this future result that we want. And so all of our minds are in, even with money. I mean, how am I going to be able to get that next job and earn more money? Or how am I going to be, I mean, it is often about the future, and it's often about the past. So what are we doing with those? What should we do with those thoughts? I mean, we still have to obviously think about our future. So how do we kind of reconcile all of that?
Well, it's important to have a vision of a desired result because that creates the motivation to leave your comfort zone. But then you have to come back and focus on the present moment. The vision kind of sets out where you want to go, but
Mhm.
then you have to focus on what you're doing in this moment and whether what you're doing in this moment is moving you closer to or further away from your desired result. So you actually need both.
Yeah, perfect. So I love any kind of visioning. Are you a proponent of visualization and that kind of?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, the vision, developing an emotional connection to a desired result. You have to have an emotional connection to a desired result that's stronger than your fear. That's stronger than the fear that will be generated in you when you start to move in that direction.
Mhm.
If your emotional connection to a desired result isn't stronger than your fear, you won't you won't leave your comfort zone. And quite frankly, most people don't have that level of emotional connection to a desired result. So what they do instead, if they're not willing to change themselves, they try and use position-based power to change everybody else. They
Mhm.
try and we've been doing that for a very, very, very long time. And that's why the current level of employee engagement, according to Gallup, worldwide is about 13%. Low levels of employee engagement are costing the US economy alone over $1 trillion a year. And there's almost a one-to-one correlation between the level of employee engagement and the level of customer engagement. So if your employees don't feel engaged, then neither do your customers. So it's a massive problem.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thought right there.
Well, actually, most of the environments people work in are toxic.
Yeah.
They're environments that cause them to give away their energy, and that creates burnout. That creates people saying, I'm out of here. I am not going to go back into that kind of environment. And see, they don't have the emotional intelligence. They don't have the awareness to exist in that kind of environment without giving away their energy. And so that's one of the reasons why as you develop your emotional intelligence, it doesn't matter what environment you're in, because you're not going to give away your energy. You can exist in toxic environments. You can exist with people with their walls up or their walls down, will not affect how you behave. And that's actually how you become an inspirational leader to others. See, if you need a title to get people to follow you, you're not a leader. If your actions don't inspire followers, you're not a leader. So the ultimate accreditation or litmus test of leadership is inspired followers without a title. See, leadership's not a position, it's a choice. And whether you're folding boxes in the warehouse or signing checks in the Oval Office, it's a choice. They're just different jobs.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's really something. So I love disassociating it with a job or a position.
Yeah.
So it's a way of being more than anything.
Yep. It's a way of being. See, we're focused on doing. We're not focused on being.
Yeah.
It's not what you do. It's how you do what you do that's most important. It's how present are you in the moment with whatever you're doing. There's an old Zen saying that's thousands of years old. And it says, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. See, it's not what you're doing. That doesn't change. It's the meaning behind what you do. It's the presence in what you do. And if your walls are down, then your behavior is going to inspire others.
Well, can you explain a little about what you mean by when your walls are down?
Sure. This is going to let me spend 4 minutes and explain the root cause of all drama, chaos, and conflict in the world.
Okay.
And offer the solution.
Great.
And I've been proving what I'm about to say all over the world for the last 21 years. So buckle up. We're only conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. When we're born, the rest of the time we're relying on our unconscious habits to determine our behavior and results, and that's fine. Our unconscious mind is actually stronger, faster, and takes much less of our metabolic energy than our conscious mind. If we had to rely on our conscious mind to survive, we would be dead instantly. Our conscious mind plays an important role, but it's our unconscious mind that's really running the show. Anyways, I digress. When we're born, we're not born with a conscious mind. We're born with an unconscious mind, and we immediately start wiring up our brain, creating those habits in order to survive, fit in, get food, that kind of stuff. Our conscious mind starts about a year or so after we're born. But a lot of those early habits that we start to create are habits that cause us to unconsciously give away our energy to others. And we do it in a myriad of ways. How we communicate, listen, take responsibility, make decisions, all sorts of ways. But when we do that, it creates an energy deficit in us. So at the same time, we're unconsciously giving away our energy over here. We have to be replacing the energy we're giving away over here by trying to steal energy from other people over here. And that dynamic is going on inside of everybody in the world all the time. And that's the root cause of all of the drama, chaos, and conflict in the world. So what I do in the MBL program is I show people how they're unconsciously giving away their energy. And I give them better habits to practice to stop doing that. You see, when you stop giving away your energy, your need to steal the energy of other people goes away because you don't need it. And it's in that process that you develop your emotional intelligence, you become more inspirational leaders, and you raise your level of consciousness about what's going on in you and around you. And I'll tell you something else. If this hasn't freaked out your listeners enough, I often ask people that are going through the MBL program, I often ask them as they're going through it, and they're saying, this is amazing, this is incredible, they're getting great results. And I say, yeah, I know that, but let me ask you something. Is there anything I could have said in the beginning before you started down this path that could have prepared you for what you know now? And I mean, I've worked with people running multi-billion-dollar companies and Harvard MBAs and PhDs and everything in between. And every one of them says, no, there's nothing you could have said to me in the beginning that could have prepared me for what I know now. And see, that's the difference between knowing something intellectually and knowing something experientially. You can only connect the dots in hindsight after you've taken the initial leap of faith to leave your comfort zone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Works like hell.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that we can all learn this. It's a learnable skill.
Anybody can learn it.
And not easily, and I love this point too, because I've done a lot of my own personal development. And when you talked about that, was it emotional labor? I think, was that the term?
Yep.
It is. And it's so worth it. And so
it's the hardest thing. I was born with dyslexia. And I can tell you, my brain doesn't work the way most people's brains work. It's like a blind person that develops great hearing. Because my brain doesn't work the way most people's brains work, it forced me to do a lot of what I refer to as emotional labor that I never would have done if I hadn't had the good fortune of being born with dyslexia. And back in those days, there was no such thing as dyslexia or ADD or ADHD. The emotional labor required to develop emotional intelligence is like Navy SEAL training for your emotions.
Mm.
You would never do, it's like going to the dentist. You'd never go to the dentist unless you're either in pain or trying to avoid pain. Mm-hmm. So without an urgent desire for better results to motivate you to leave your comfort zone, there is no chance you will do the emotional labor that the development of emotional intelligence requires.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really thinking about just how reactive everyone is. And,
sure.
And so I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be a big crux of this is learning.
You know, the old story, there's a Stanford in the late 60s, you know, you could have one marshmallow now or two marshmallows in half an hour. We're a one marshmallow now world. We are terrible at being strategic. Mm. Our strategic horizon is maybe a year, maybe 3 months. We're pretty good at reacting to pandemics and things like that, although it's arguable. But once the flood is over or the fire is over, we forget about it and go back to life as usual. and we don't do the strategic things to prevent the overwhelming devastation and cost that these challenges create. We keep hoping that somebody else is going to come in and save the day, and that person's not coming. We're the leaders we've been waiting for. We have to develop our emotional intelligence and leadership in order to change our trajectory. And we have to do it a lot faster than we're going to be comfortable in doing it. We're leaving a dead cat on the doorstep of future generations, and we know it. We know it. We're afraid to admit it, but we know it because change is hard. We have kids in grade school committing suicide because they're saying, hey, I don't have a chance, and I don't even get a vote. I think, quite frankly, we're at a tipping point as a species on the planet, and we have to start developing our emotional intelligence to deal with the drama and chaos that we're going to experience as the rate of change continues to accelerate. Some scientists estimate that in this century, we could experience the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change, or 200 centuries worth of change. So change never happened before. In previous generations, from the time somebody was born to the time they died, things are pretty much the same. For us, for our parents, their parents. Now change is increasing at an exponential rate. We can actually stand on the street corner and watch change occur. And we've got a brain that doesn't like change. So we need to develop the emotional intelligence to be able to deal with the anxiety that our brain and our social networks are going to create when faced with this accelerating rate of change. It's not a solution to the challenges we face. It is the only solution to the challenges we face. And our educational system and our employment system, they failed us by focusing strictly on intellectual intelligence, and they've done nothing to prepare our emotional intelligence for the world we're living in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when we talked before, I was feeling, like, wow, this is just so daunting and depressing. But you brought up an excellent point, which is we've been pretending none of this is happening, and we've been sticking our heads in the sand. And so we've
been behaving like slowly boiling frogs.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we have to save ourselves by being real about where we are. We have to be real about climate change. We have to be real about AI. We have to be real about CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology. We have to be real about where we are as a species on the planet. And we have to start to make the strategic decisions and implement them in order to change our trajectory, because the trajectory we're on is just not sustainable. And we know it. This is not new information for anybody.
Yeah, thank you. It's not a fun, easy topic to really even engage in, but we have to. You're right. And so, and
the thing is, the results by doing this work will be remarkable. Will be remarkable. The payoff, the ROI for developing our emotional intelligence is incredible. We have the opportunity to create we have the opportunity to create a higher level of consciousness, to create a higher level of success than we could ever dream of. The real challenge is that now we're at a point where we have to do this work that we've been putting off for generations. We're at the point, because of the accelerating rate of global change, where our generation has to begin the process of changing our trajectory. We don't have any more options.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the payoff is phenomenal.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little? A couple examples maybe, or one example of how you've seen this play out with.
I'll give you an example of a company that's currently doing over $1 trillion a year in revenue. And their primary hiring focus is on emotional intelligence. And as soon as I tell you who the company is, you'll begin to understand what I'm about to say. That company is Apple. That's why when you walk into an Apple store, that energy you feel is an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. They're not trying to sell you anything. They want to understand your pain and, if possible, offer a solution. Whether or not you buy anything is secondary. They want you to have a great experience. Maybe you'll go tell your friends and they'll tell their friends. And that energy is a very different energy from the stores around it. Mm-hmm. People gravitate to that energy. We have these, without getting too much into it, we have these specialized brain cells because we've grown up, we've evolved from herds. We've had to develop the sense for who's trying to help us and who's trying to hurt us, who's trying to eat us. So we have these specialized brain cells in our prefrontal cortex that brain scientists call mirror neurons. I call them bullshit meters. That's why when you walk into a room, you can sense the energy in the room. You can sense the mood. Or you're having a conversation with somebody, you can sense whether they're being real or not, whether they're trying to help you or hurt you. You can't fake it. And so, as you develop your emotional intelligence, you're actually able to outcarry your competition. You can develop deeper, more trusted advisor relationships with the people you seek to serve than your competitors. There's something called the trust economy that's growing actually much faster than the traditional economy. It's currently estimated at over $10 trillion a year. Because of the accelerating rate of global change, we can't keep up. There's too much going on. So we're being forced to rely more and more on people we trust, on our network of trusted advisors. So those trust networks are the most valuable asset you have as an individual or as an organization. And the way you demonstrate trustability is by lowering your walls. That's why people like babies and dogs. Mm-hmm. There's no judgment. They're not judging us. So their walls being down inspires us to lower our walls. Yeah. And that's the same kind of environment that organizations that focus on emotional intelligence are creating. Apple, Google, Southwest Airlines, JetBlue, Infosys, Whole Foods, FedEx, Costco. More and more companies are hiring, developing, and promoting emotional intelligence. Works like hell.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love that you brought up Apple, because even when my son was little, we would go to the Apple store because he wanted to. I would have never even known an Apple store was around, but he was the one dragging me to them. And he would always tell me from the time he was little how much he loved the feeling in there. He's like, I just love the vibe of the Apple store. So I developed, I started to love it too. And so
mirror neurons.
It's fascinating. Yeah. Okay. I think, people, if people are thinking, what does this have to do with money? Well, it has everything to do with everything.
Think about this. Let's talk about money. This is about money. The biggest pieces of business almost always go to the trusted advisor. Technological leadership comes and goes. Price leadership comes and goes. If somebody wants to deal with you, if they trust you, if they view your success and their success as connected, they'll find a way to deal with you, even if you don't have the best price or the best technology. Conversely, if they don't want to deal with you, they'll find a way not to deal with you, even if you have the best price and the best technology. So purchasing decisions, by the way, purchasing decisions are always made in the limbic part of our brain, the emotional part of our brain first. So after we've already made the purchasing decision emotionally, then we look for features and benefits intellectually to justify the decision we've already made emotionally.
Yeah.
So again, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence creates actually what's called a limbic system lock. So it's you're able to connect with the other person on an emotional level, and it creates trust.
Yeah, I love everything about this. I find it so fascinating that back in the day when I was in the corporate world, which is kind of a long time ago, but how much emotions, I talk about this all the time with people, but emotion, you had to leave emotion at the door. There was nothing about your feelings or your emotions that were really allowed in the workplace. It's changed a lot, but I just think it's so fascinating that we're circling around now to this place where we're trying to understand.
Well, if you think about it, that corporations paid most attention to intellectual intelligence and experience. So there's a wide variation between levels of emotional intelligence within organizations. Most executives in any company have above average IQs and lots of experience. Fantastic. But there's no real measurement of their emotional intelligence other than the toxicity in the environment. So it's really, it's something that we've ignored or been unaware of, that we have to become aware of, and we have to start developing our emotional intelligence. We really don't have a choice.
Yeah. I think this is fascinating, and I think it works in everybody's favor in the workplace and in personal life. And so, I mean, it's an all-round, as you said before, way of being that is going to be just happier, less stressful, more empowering, and more, providing more potential for everything.
Emotional intelligence will become a multi-trillion-dollar industry. You think about the hundreds of billions of dollars people spend in getting MBAs and degrees focused primarily on the ability to do intellectual labor. The payoff for developing emotional intelligence, the ROI for developing emotional intelligence, is so much greater than intellectual intelligence.
Yeah. Phil, this is so interesting, and I'd love for people to hear how they can connect with you, how they can learn more from you. I mean, you're obviously a wealth of knowledge and experience in this area, and so you've gotten me really excited to read more about emotional intelligence and learn more. You already said that reading isn't enough, so yeah, you'll have to tell us what we
don't fall into the trap of looking for a book.
I was just about to go there. Yeah. Okay. So tell us what we do and how people can connect with you on this.
You can reach me via LinkedIn. I'll send you. I'll give you a link to my my calendar. So if anybody wants to reach out and have a chat, I'd be happy to meet with them on Zoom. See, even if the reality is that most people aren't willing to do the emotional labor that change requires yet. So I'm really looking for those people that really are willing to commit to doing the work necessary to start generating remarkable results. And those are the people, those are going to become the role models, the leaders that are going to inspire the rest of us. So I'm not expecting thousands of people to automatically reach out. If we can get 5 people, that's significant. And if you think about it, it hasn't taken many people in the past to have a dramatic impact on our trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no different than now.
Yeah, that was a really helpful, inspiring thing that you said to me the other day. I mean, there are a few names that you threw out, and when you hear those names, you immediately know, wow, it was a single person making, having a huge impact on the world.
And here's the deal. Every person on the planet, you included, me included, has the ability to be one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference between them and us is they had an emotional connection to a desired result that was stronger than the fear of moving to get it.
Yeah, which brings up another interesting question. Are you able to help people to get that emotional connection with?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things I do.
Yeah. Okay. And tell us a little about your program.
Well, it's a 16-week program initially, although there are organizations that I've been working with for over 13 years because the ROI keeps getting greater and greater. The development of emotional intelligence is something that you never get. It's a never-ending process, but the ROI as you do the work keeps getting greater. So the payoff keeps getting better and better. Does that help?
Okay. Yes, it does. And I really appreciate you being here today. This opens up, it really is just the opening to a conversation that's quite large and comprehensive. So thank you for introducing this more to me and to my audience, and love what you do, love your passion for it. And I can see that you have a vision out there that is pretty clear, I think, and what you're doing is really working toward that. So again, I appreciate you being on it and discussing all this with us in the very compelling way that you do. And yeah, thank you. And I hope people will get in touch with you. I hope people will follow you have a newsletter that they can follow and learn more about what you're doing, because this is clearly, as you've said, this is the answer to a lot of things, whether it's in your company or in your life or, collectively as a world. So
just remember that money has no value. We should never focus on revenue. Revenue is the result of providing authentic service. We need to provide authentic, emotionally intelligent service. The better we are at doing that, the more shiny beads people are going to want to give us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful way to think about it. Yeah, yep. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, Phil, again, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for being here with us today on the Money and You Show. You can reach me, Michelle, 2 L's, at limitfreelife.com. You can check out Limit Free Life. There are some wonderful free resources there for career change, for productivity, for understanding your relationship with money. So check that out. And join us here again next Monday at 7 o'clock at ubn.com and all the other places where podcasts can be found. So thanks again. See you next week.